Now, live on Fox Providence. This is Eyewitness News at 6:30. Coverage you can count on.
Welcome to a special presentation from Eyewitness News Weather Week, exploring summer threats. Good evening, I'm meteorologist Tony Petrarca.
And I'm meteorologist Michelle Muscatello. All week long, we've been informing you about different kinds of summer weather we might experience this time of year, whether it's lightning or even rip currents.
We've covered a lot of topics this week. The outlook for the hurricane season, Hurricane Hunter. You have a great story, smart grid technology, story with National Grid. How's this one? Tsunamis.
A meteo tsunami.
And you did come up with that idea.
I did.
You found that.
I saw an article that was written about it, a study that was done recently, and that is something that does occur in Narragansett Bay. So we looked into it more. So of course, you know, New England's no stranger to hurricanes, Tony.
Yeah, in fact, I always ask this little trivia question. When was the last major, meaning Category 3 hurricane to strike our area? It was not Hurricane Bob. You've got to go back to an entire generation back in 1954 with Hurricane Carol. So it's been a long time since a major hurricane has struck. So unfortunately, it's not a matter of if, but rather when. We're 6 weeks into hurricane season. We're tracking something in the Gulf of Mexico right now. And we take a look at the remainder of the hurricane season and how it may play out. Take a look.
On average, 1 to 2 hurricanes make landfall in the U.S. each season. The past 2 seasons had extreme impacts on the United States with billions of dollars in damage. New England hurricane history has names like Carol, Donna, Gloria, and Bob. The worst storm on record, the unnamed hurricane of 1938.
After the devastating storm surge from Hurricane Carol back in 1954, state officials decided to build the Fox Point Hurricane Barrier in 1960 to prevent a storm surge from coming up into downtown Providence. 1954, that's the last major hurricane, meaning Category 3 or higher. So it's not a matter of if the next Category 3 hurricane happens, but when.
While the hurricane season runs from June 1st to the end of November, the most active period is typically August and September. The remainder of the season is predicted to be near normal. NOAA is predicting 9 to 15 named storms, of which 4 to 8 will become hurricanes, with 2 to 4 of those hurricanes becoming major storms. But regardless of the numbers, we need to be prepared every season. I spoke with Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center. He stresses it only takes one storm and to always be prepared.
It doesn't take a lot of storms to make it a busy season. That's why preparedness is everything. It's getting ready just in case. Don't worry about the number of storms. Just be ready for what could happen.
There are so many global factors that can influence the hurricane season, but by far the biggest one, the oceans and sea surface temperatures, and specifically where's the water running warmer or colder than average. Sea surface temperature anomalies in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And it's this part of the Pacific along the equator that we watch with some interest. We're currently in an El Nino phase. In other words, this part of the water running warmer than average, and that can influence global or weather circulations across the entire northern hemisphere, which in turn can dictate how the Atlantic hurricane season will be in terms of storm strength, frequency, and track.
So it remains to be seen if the warmer Atlantic waters and the current El Nino in the Pacific will offset each other this season. We still have 21 more weeks of hurricane season to go.
And the concern now in the Gulf of Mexico with Barry forming in anywhere from Texas to Louisiana, perhaps under the gun as far as heavy rain and wind. So the season is getting active.
It definitely is, and we see our peak the season later in the August and September. All right, so we wanted to answer some viewer questions. This one comes from Joe Murphy. He'd like to know the difference between the dew point and the relative humidity. So, of course, this time of year we talk a lot about the dew point, and it's a comfortability factor for us. The higher the number, the more uncomfortable it is. Well, it's a better point to use rather than relative humidity.
So dew point essentially is a direct measurement of how much moisture is in the air, and the dew point's high right now. You can feel the muggy air today and this evening, whereas the relative humidity takes into account it's relative to what the current temperature is and what that air temperature, how much water vapor can hold at a certain temperature. Bottom line, I think you and I like dew point better as far as a better reference.
Well, I mean, we see the relative humidity nearly 100% in the morning hours. Even on a winter or fall day, you can get a dew point of 50 and an air temperature, or a relative humidity at 100% if the dew point's 50 and the air temperature is 50. That's pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
And the dew point's 70 and the air temperature is 75, all of a sudden that's very uncomfortable.
And our severe thunderstorms need high dew points, a lot of moisture in the air to get these storms to be violent. And when you get these violent thunderstorms, sometimes you get some power outages.
Yeah, and a major advancement in Rhode Island's power grid is set to take place over the next few years. National Grid's actually going to be filing a proposal later this summer for installing new smart meter technology in Rhode Island homes. It's taking a look at how these upgrades make a difference in keeping your power on when major storms hit.
Tropical Storm Irene, Superstorm Sandy, the blizzard of 2013, the August 2015 macro burst, in October 2017 nor'easter, the March 2018 blizzard. These are just some of the storms in the last decade that have caused large-scale power outages in Rhode Island, leaving thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of residents and businesses in the dark for days. And while major storms can't be stopped, the Rhode Island Division of Public Utilities and Carriers believes upgrading to smart meter technology could make a sizable dent in the number of outages by providing nearly instant two-way communication between homes and businesses and the power company.
When there's a storm, there's something called a last gasp transmission that you can get from the smart meter that lets you know the power has been cut off. But even more importantly, you can find out when power has been restored.
And that's the key, an instant notification to the power company that your power's off or turned back on.
One of the things we found is that there were hundreds of crews that were dispatched to locations where the power was actually restored. If in fact they had smart meters, we would know on a really granular level which entities were up and which entities were offline. And those crews would not have been dispatched. They'd been dispatched to areas where they could have restored service.
Replacing all of the traditional meters, about 500,000 of them, with smart meters is estimated to cost around $200 million. According to National Grid, they have a goal of completing the project by the end of 2023. On Block Island, smart meters have been used for more than 5 years, and the president of Block Island Power says they've seen significant benefits, first and foremost with managing storms, in some instances cutting the outage time in half.
Actually, Tony, Rhode Island's a little bit behind the times. Roughly half of homes and businesses in the United States already have smart meters. And in Florida, for hurricane season, it's estimated that it prevented 55,000 outages during Hurricane Matthew in 2016.
So the fact that it's hyper-local, in real time, gets crews there faster, gets the power on quicker.
It's just communicating. It's communicating with new technology.
And that's why it's called smart technology.
Yes.
Boom.
All right, well, speaking of weather phenomenons, I took this video earlier this week showing two halos around the sun. The first sun halo, and then behind it what we call, or under it, what we call a circumhorizontal arc, an upside down rainbow.
And sometimes, Mish, you can see this phenomena in with the moon out at night. You can get a ring around the moon, and you know, the clouds that cause this are not made up of water droplets, but rather ice crystals. And then you get into light physics and how the sunlight going through those ice crystals gets refracted, and you get that that halo. So even on your day off, you're just like looking for weather. How do you do it?
I noticed it. I was actually at the pool with my kids, and I was like, hold on, everybody. And take some video of this. But you know, the circumhorizontal arcs are unique to typically around the midsummer time and mid-afternoon. You have to have that sun at that high angle, unlike a typical rainbow where the sun is at a low angle.
In fact, that day I was getting a lot of phone calls and emails about, you know, there's a ring around the sun, and it was terrific. All right, we're putting TJ to work. Myself and TJ were at Quonset Point when the Hurricane Hunter aircraft were in the state of Rhode Island back in May, and TJ had the opportunity to take a look at the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. We use the data from these planes that fly into hurricanes, and they're currently flying into Barry now, to get vital information to figure out what storms are doing and what they may do as far as tracking and intensity. So you want to talk about a rough job and a bumpy ride.
I know, but I mean, I don't know any meteorologist that wouldn't want to take a ride on one of those Hurricane Hunter aircraft.
I don't even like being in an elevator.
I would do it.
You would do it?
Totally.
All right, TJ gets a closer look. He's actually in the cockpit. Take a look.
Crews aboard Hurricane Hunter aircraft go to great heights to protect lives and property. We caught up with Hurricane Hunters here at Quonset State Airport.
These are two of only 12 airplanes in the world allowed to fly into hurricanes.
This aircraft does both forecast and track information gathering.
The NOAA WP3, nicknamed Kermit, is decorated with 110 stickers for each storm it's flown through, including Gloria, Bob, Irene, and Sandy.
So its job is to go right through the middle, through the eye wall, into the center, to find that low-level center of circulation, and then right back out the other side.
Commander Nate Kahn has been flying into hurricanes since 2015. He said one of his worst flights was in Matthew in 2016.
We dropped a couple thousand feet in a few seconds and came back up a couple thousand feet in a few seconds, and it was about 3 to 3.5 G load on the airplane during that movement, and it was very, very sharp.
The most violent storm that I've ever been in was Hurricane Dean.
Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Ragusa has flown into 90 hurricanes in Air Force Reserve HC-130s.
Hurricane Dean made landfall as a Category 5, in that as it makes landfall, it tends to become more violent for the airplane and a lot more up and down.
The dangers are not lost on the pilots, but their training prepares them for the violent nature of these storms. The information they gather is critical. Sensors on the planes gather information horizontally, but drop sounds are shot out of both the NOAA and Air Force Hurricane Hunter planes to gather information vertically through the storm.
Well, we get pressure, wind speed, wind direction, temperature, and humidity. So all that information is obviously important to see what the structure of the hurricane looks like.
The data is sent back to the National Hurricane Center and used in computer models to determine how a storm will develop and where it might go.
The information we gather really does impact people and can help people. It's a humbling experience.
For the extended interviews with the Hurricane Hunter pilots, where you can learn more about their jobs and other flights they've been on, you can go to our website at WPRI.com. I'm TJ Del Santo, Eyewitness News.
And as TJ just mentioned, we have even more in-depth coverage on our website for Weather Week, including our interactive hurricane tracker, and learn what it's like to fly into a hurricane. It's all there on WPRI.com and the WPRI 12 News app.
Still to come on this Weather Week special, we check out a different kind of tsunami generated by the atmosphere.
Plus, we know thunderstorms well in this area, so what should you do in case of a severe thunderstorm? We find out. Welcome back to Weather Week, exploring summer threats. A tornado warning doesn't always come with a tornado. According to Iowa State Mesonet data, there have been 11 tornado warnings issued in Rhode Island since the year 2000. But there have only been 4 confirmed tornadoes. The most recent one last October, which caused damage in North Providence and Lincoln. A tornado warning is issued by the National Weather Service when there's evidence that a tornado is imminent, even if there's no visual confirmation that a tornado is occurring. Sometimes on Doppler radar, if we see rotation, even though there's no tornado on the ground, the National Weather Service will issue that warning.
Yeah, some of that technology that we still are working towards having with radar technology.
That's it.
All right, you've probably heard of a tsunami, but there's one kind you may not know much about. Pete Mangione headed out to our coastline to learn more about meteo tsunamis.
There is a special kind of wave that can hit the shores of Rhode Island, and this wave is all about the weather. Sid Abruzzi has been surfing for 58 years and constantly watches how the weather will impact the waves during hurricane season. He likes hurricanes that get close, but not too close.
We'd love them to stay off the coast a little bit, where we wouldn't get the destruction, but we'd get the wave size.
So what about surfing a tsunami in New England waters?
There's a different kind of tsunami that's not generated by an earthquake. Rather, it can be generated by the atmosphere.
It's called a meteo tsunami, and meteo tsunami expert and researcher Dr. Richard Jablonski says it's not nearly as destructive as the giant tsunamis that make headlines around the world. A meteo tsunami usually starts with high pressure generated from downdrafts in a line of thunderstorms moving offshore, but the speed is critical.
If the thunderstorms are moving at the same speed that the waves move, then you can generate a larger and a larger wave.
To stop the wave from going out to sea, the continental shelf can bounce it back to our coastline. That's what happened in 2013 when Eyewitness News reported about how a meteo tsunami damaged a boat in Wickford Harbor. Jablonski says the wave height was only around 2 feet, but the combination of the faster current and the element of surprise was enough to create troubled waters.
You may be out near your boat or even in the water, and all of a sudden a wave comes in rather quickly and catches you off guard and can do some damage.
It's impossible to predict exactly when the next meteo tsunami will strike, but there are several atmospheric ingredients to look for. They include a fast-moving line of thunderstorms moving offshore to our south, like the storms that pushed off the shore of New Jersey in 2013. For Abruzzi, who also owns Water Brothers in Newport, predicting and surfing the next Rhode Island meteo tsunami does not seem realistic. In fact, while the continental shelf plays a key role in kicking up Rhode Island meteo tsunamis, it's actually bad for surfing.
Our continental shelf doesn't do us any favors, meaning like a 20-foot swell coming at the East Coast, once it hits the shelf, might even be dropped in half.
Dr. Yablonsky points out that there's often meteo tsunami activity off the East Coast around 2 times a year, but the activity often goes unrecorded if the waves are too small or no one is around to notice it. I'm meteorologist Pete Mangione, Eyewitness News.
Very interesting topic. Interesting.
Yeah, the whole happens right here.
The whole wave phenomenon. All right, getting viewer questions, and let's take a look at this one. It's from Chris Reynolds, and he asks, how does hail get to be softball-sized hail, which is actually rare, as opposed to pea-sized hail before it falls? And we had some pea-sized hail just like about a week and a half ago. All right, so hail occurs in severe thunderstorms, and there's an air motion in severe thunderstorms called an updraft. In other words, it keeps the hailstone further up into the atmosphere where it's cold. So bottom line, the longer a hailstone is in the upper part of the atmosphere where it's cold, the better its chances of becoming larger. And you can see we use objects to refer to hail size, anywhere from pea size to golf ball size, baseball size. Of course, the one on the right is a bad day. That's a
very
great
bad day.
Even for the Midwest, grapefruit size hail. But the hailstorm that we had was about a week and a half ago.
Yeah, we even got some ping pong ball sized hail, golf ball sized hail reports in some locations. And again, that's that hailstone just staying up in the clouds and growing as it bounces around within the clouds until it gets so heavy that it falls out. When I go into schools and we talk about the difference between sleet versus hail, which can be a confusing topic for kids, and we talk about hail forming in severe weather and thunderstorms, and it always forms around something. So if you were to take it and slice it in half, look at it under a microscope, you might see a little dust particle or even a bug that supercooled water droplet starts to form around.
So the criteria for a severe thunderstorm is not lightning or rain, but rather hail size, and strong wind, whether it's straight line wind or a tornado. So of course, mostly during the spring and summertime season, we get our severe thunderstorms. Great question, Chris. Thank you very much.
All right, we've got more coming up on Weather Week, exploring summer threats. What should you do to stay safe in the case of lightning? We talked to experts to find out. Welcome back. We usually get at least a few severe thunderstorm warnings every summer. A severe thunderstorm warning is issued by the National Weather Service when damaging thunderstorms have a pretty good chance of occurring. So it's a decent measuring stick for how much severe weather occurs. So the question is, which summer month has the most severe thunderstorm warnings? Tony, do you have a guess?
I'll say, is it July?
Yep, you are right.
Boom!
Since 1986, July is king with 104 issued warnings. June comes in second with 85, and then August comes in third with 63 warnings issued.
And speaking of thunderstorms, I mean, all thunderstorms, regardless of severe or not, produce lightning. And when you and I go to the schools all the time, we get the questions about lightning and lightning safety. So Tori Goshi takes a closer look at lightning and safety.
One of the best things that you can do when you hear thunder roar? Go indoors. Every year, people die from being struck by lightning. According to the National Weather Service, the 30-year national average shows that 43 people are killed each year because of this superheated bolt of electricity, which is 4.8 times hotter than the surface of the sun. According to the National Weather Service, between the years of 1959 and 2017, Rhode Island recorded 8 lightning-related deaths, while Massachusetts saw 32. The majority of the deaths in our area occur when people are caught outside in an open field or underneath a tree. If you find yourself in the middle of a lightning storm and you're outside, run to the nearest grounded building or a hardtop vehicle. Once inside the car, remember, do not touch anything metal, including your seatbelt. A bit of good news, according to the National Weather Service storm data, 90% of the people struck by lightning survive. Survivors describe various complications after being struck. Short-term impacts include temporary deafness, blindness, and respiratory issues. More long-term complications include muscle spasms, seizures, cataracts, and memory loss. If you come across someone who's been struck by lightning, you may think the person is electrically charged. That is a myth. The body doesn't store electricity. Administer first aid and CPR if needed. More good news, we're noticing a downward trend in lightning-related deaths. Data from the National Weather Service shows the 30-year national average stands at 43 deaths. The 10-year average drops down to 27 deaths. And the odds that you will be struck this year are 1 in 1,222,000. Keep yourself ahead of the storm and download the WPRI weather app today. I'm meteorologist Tori Goshi, Eyewitness News.
And the rule is, if you can hear thunder, even though you don't see rain and lightning, the storm is close enough to produce a lightning strike, even though you don't see it and there's no rain. So safety.
A couple of catchy phrases that we use in weather to talk about severe weather threats. One is when thunder roars, go indoors, which means as soon as you can hear the thunder, you're close enough to be struck by lightning. The other is turn around, don't drown, which is if you come across a flooded roadway, we get these heavy downpours, you never want to try and cross it. You always want to turn around.
We talk about when we go to schools to talk about weather, that counting rule, and the students. So you see the flash of lightning, you start counting 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, keep counting until you hear the rumble of thunder. The less you can count, the storm is coming closer. The more you can count, the storm is moving away. How's that for high technology?
I mean, right? You still sometimes use those cues from nature itself, right?
And speaking of technology, download the Pinpoint Weather app. It'll warn you about lightnings and approaching storms and all that good stuff.
Our website as well always has this Weather Week content on at WPRI.com. Have a great night.